Hey guys, this is New York Dan coming at you for the Ben's Products channel. And what I'm doing today, I'm in the process of actually changing out some really hard stuff on my Mercedes 300 SD air conditioning system. Now I've done a number of videos on that Mercedes 300 SD, and the deal is, haven't had time to edit them and put them up yet. They're coming up on the channel, but what I wanted to do today is to show you, as I'm doing this air conditioning and we're having like this record heat, a lot of the country's under a heat wave, I wanted to do a quick video about the air conditioning systems that apply to just about any car. There are two different systems in automotive air conditioning. One of them uses what's called an orifice tube. All this is simply a small hole that the liquid refrigerant, as it comes out of the condenser and it's cooled down, it throttles the liquid refrigerant, shooting it out into the evaporator, which is what, it's like a small radiator inside your car's climate control. That's what actually cools the air that comes into your passenger compartment. Now, the orifice system works pretty well. A matter of fact, in my opinion, I have it on the Mustang, and I think it might even be better than the second system, which is more elaborate. The second system uses what's called an expansion valve. Now, the expansion valve, you might say, why even bother with an expansion valve if you could just use an orifice, which is nothing more than a tube with a restriction in it to throttle the refrigerant? Well, if it works correctly, this expansion valve, it has a thermostat on one end of it, and what that does is it monitors, you see that large hole? It monitors the vaporized refrigerant coming back through that large hole, and if it gets too cold, it actually pushes a valve. There's a shaft going through here, you can see from that thermostat. It will actually move that shaft and close off the smaller hole, which is liquid refrigerant going into the evaporator. So if this works correctly, it's supposed to throttle the refrigerant. Not only it restricts it because you have a liquid going into a vapor in the evaporator, just like the orifice hole does, but this one is like an active orifice hole. It can open and close that, so it's supposed to be able to keep your evaporator from freezing up, and it can run it at like the maximum rate because of that active thermostat action. However, I kind of suspect that, and I'm going to say this is more common with American cars, the orifice tube system. I kind of suspect what they did is they just made the evaporator extra large, and they let the orifice tube, it basically will let in plenty of refrigerant. You evaporate it out over a larger evaporator, which it turns from liquid to gas, and that might be why these systems seem to work even better. because they may in fact be using larger systems. Now, what I keep holding up here, this is called a receiver dryer. These units in every automotive air conditioning system, what they do is they store up extra refrigerant that's not needed by the system is circulating stuff through here. It's like a reserve. This is like reserve capacity. Inside here is a desiccant. It's in a bag, like a fine mesh. It's almost like a charcoal type substance, which it may in fact be. What it does, it absorbs moisture from the refrigerant to keep the system very dry. The problem is the moisture will actually turn to ice and plug up the small orifice tube or the expansion valve, the small part of the expansion valve. That's how it works. Now, this isn't a receiver dryer. I wanted to show you a big difference here. I just got this one from Amazon, and you see how it has these fittings on the top for different size tubing going into it. You notice how small those are? Like, that's the threaded part. Okay, the lines going into this type of receiver dryer are much smaller than this type. You see how big these lines are? I'm going to tell you why. With this system, they are running vapor through these lines. This is on the low pressure side. This whole thing gets like cold, actually. You can, when the thing is running, these sweat. They get, all these tubes get ice cold if you have enough refrigerant. It's simply because it's on the low pressure side of your car. And I'm not sure, this thing here might be an R134. This looks like a pressure port for checking and or charging. And actually, oh wow, I'm not really impressed. If you can see that O-ring right there, it's already cracking. And this is a brand new part that I've had in reserve. There is, however, a little needle valve in here to prevent that from leaking. You can take this off. But I'm not impressed with that O-ring. This is one of those aftermarket parts you get for cheap. The way it works, if you have it like this, the American versions, they're usually on an orifice system. The ones with the smaller lines going to them, like my Mercedes, this thing is actually running on the high pressure end of the system. And it has liquid refrigerant going through here. That's a big difference. And this one, they even give you a sight glass. You can look in there when it's running and see if there, I think the way it works is if there are a lot of bubbles in there, the system is not fully charged. As the system's fully charged up, the bubbles disappear. So these things work, they work a little bit differently. This receiver dryer here for the Mercedes, this will actually be warm or hot when it's running. The one for the Mustang, this system here, this gets cold. And it's in a different part of the system and actually puts the vapors run through here, I believe, on their way back to the compressor, if I'm not mistaken. Or Now it's got to be that way because I've seen these get real cold. I was thinking maybe the vapors go through here after the compressor, but if that was the case, this thing would be getting hot. So these things are oddly enough in totally different parts of the system. I have a charge can here. A lot of people use these just to top their system off. This one comes with a nice gauge. You don't want to overpressure the system. There's also something else. If you've gotten one of these things, if you have an old can of R134 lying around, you got to be careful because the old ones, it used to have a metal seal here that was punctured when you put in the adapter to fill it. The new ones actually have a check valve in here. Now, if you have a new one with a check valve, you need to also get a newer fill adapter. This just has a blunt tip to press on the check valve. The other ones actually had a needle type tip to pierce the can. I think all the new cans are coming with this check valve now. So if you have like an older fill port, an older adapter, you may in fact have to just buy a new one to use these cans. I have seen some kind of a converter adapter that you could screw on. I don't know, this was like a year or two ago, a couple years ago. I don't know if they still have those. So what I was going to tell you, my Mercedes air conditioning, it uses this expansion valve, which is put in the most difficult position to get it out. I had to take half the car apart, take the windshield wiper system out, the whole air plenum, all the stuff under, right before the windshield of the car. And that thing is right on the firewall, hidden under all that stuff. And what I'm doing, I'm actually filming that as I'm doing it, and I'm going to do that as a separate video. But this is the deal. If you do it with the can fill, if you charge your system, and it goes up to pressure, right, you're in the filled range. If you see the compressor kick on just for a minute, less than a minute, just runs a little bit, and then it shuts off on you, and you've got the system fully pressurized, you're filling it up with the can, and that compressor will not come on. What most likely is happening, your expansion valve or your orifice tube is plugged up. Or with the expansion valve, this thermostat on it failed to work. It's gone bad. And it's not opening the valve up like it should. You see, if this thing gets too cold, it sucks the valve in and it closes it. Well, if it fails the right way, it can actually be closed even when this thing is hot. And that's going to cause your system not to work. The orifice tube as well. And if you put that can in to fill your system, what should happen, the compressor should come on. That creates a very low pressure where you're filling this. So then the refrigerant should go right in. When you have it up like this, it's vapor. When you turn it over like this, it's liquid. You don't want to put it in liquid all the time. It could lock up your compressor. I usually just keep an eye on it. Sometimes I twist it a little bit as I'm filling it. But that's if your system's working correctly. Now, some of these refrigerants also have a UV dye in them. you can buy, and I have a couple of them, a little UV flashlight with an LED now. It's used to, you had to get a fluorescent one with like almost like a black light style UV bulb. Now you can get a little pocket one, has a ultraviolet LED in it. And it's a special wavelength ultraviolet. You have to get the flashlight out like AutoZone or on the internet just for this purpose. If you get the right refrigerant, you have to find one of these cans that, usually it's the one with a leak stopper. It will say it has a UV dye in here. And there's also, there may even be a dye charge that you can put in the system. I believe I've done that before. So if you've got a system that is leaking, you put that UV dye in, and then you look around all the tubing and connections, preferably when it's dark at night, with that UV light. And if any place that has a leakage, the system has oil in it as well, and that will ooze out a bit and it will show right up where it's leaking. However, the bad news is the evaporator coils, most of those are hidden in a very hard to get to area of the car, where you have to start taking the dash apart depending upon how they engineered it. So you're not going to even be able to see the evaporator coil on most systems unless you completely rip it apart, and at that point you probably are better off just replacing it, because that's a major amount of labor. One of the telltale signs your evaporator is leaking, you will smell the odor of the refrigerant oil coming into your car. It has quite a smell to it. If you charge your car and you unplug this, a little bit of the oil might foam up, and you wipe it off there, you'll smell what that stuff smells like. So yeah, if you're getting a strange smell in your car while you're driving, or you have the AC on and you're losing refrigerant, you probably have a leak in the evaporator. And that's bad news, because that's going to cost a lot to replace. The condensers in the front of the car, in front of the radiator, those condensers, the newer models I've heard, they're making them with really thin copper, and they can get holes in them very easily, just from the water, rainwater and corrosion, salt coming in your radiator. If you live in a snowy climate, rocks coming up from the road, there are heat fins around them, but they can get damaged even with those heat fins protecting it. So if you take that UV light, or you look carefully around in the front of the car, that's the condenser. If you see oil coming out of that thing, chances are that's your refrigerant system leaking, your air conditioning system leaking there. Now, there's one other thing I'm going to tell you. If you have an orifice system, usually they put a very small screen in that system somewhere before the orifice to help prevent the orifice from being plugged up. However, that screen can very easily get plugged up as well. Now, I'm not sure if they use a screen like that with this other type of system with the expansion valve, because this thing kind of acts like a screen. The refrigerant, the liquid goes through here first. The other system, you have vapor going through here with the orifice tube. So if you have a big tubing like this coming out of your system, you probably have the orifice tube, and somewhere along that liquid line, the smaller high pressure line that goes to your cabin of your car, the evaporator, there will be a small mesh filter. Now, in my Mustang, I was thrown for a loop because my system was acting up a few years ago. It turns out the damn filter is built into the line. Somewhere in the middle of the damn line. I couldn't find the filter anyway because it was hidden right in the line. And you actually have to get a whole new line just to replace that filter. There are aftermarket filters you can buy that you actually cut the line, you take the old filter out, and then you compression fit on like kind of a splicer that has a new filter inside it, or a new screen. So that's another one of those mysteries that will throw you for a loop if you are trying to troubleshoot your system. And again, that's one of those things where it's showing your system's fully charged. Maybe the compressor's shutting off, or maybe the compressor's even running, but you're not getting any cooling. It's not getting cold in the car. Chances are you've got a little filter in there that's plugged up. Now, these expansion valves, when they go bad, a way to check it, well, first of all, it's so hard to get it out, you're probably going to want to just replace it if you've actually got it out like this, unless it's in a real easy position. But the way to check it is the smaller hole is where the liquid refrigerant goes. And what I do, since I have an air compressor, and anyone can get these because they're not really that expensive now. I have this little pistol grip gun, air gun. You stick it in this hole, the small hole, and just shoot some compressed air through. You can feel with your finger. You should be at room temperature. There shouldn't be a restriction. The air should go right through here. You know, a reasonable amount. If it doesn't flow through, your expansion valve is stuck closed. And I was able to get a new one for the Mercedes 300 SD. I got it right on Amazon and it only cost me about 15 bucks. So this one here, since I took the whole thing apart, see, this one here is brand new. And I take the protective tape off. Yeah, you can actually see this one. It even has a ball in the liquid port, which you may be able to see in there. A ball type valve, like a little ball bearing. But this is the part right here. This has a special thermostat type thing, some kind of substance that expands when it's heated, shrinks when it's colder. And you can see the shaft going right through. What it does, this is where the actual valve is. Now, interesting. This is strange. I don't even know. You know, I'm just peeling this off. And I'm a little concerned now. I got to see how this one works. Because what I'm seeing is, I don't get this one bit. This is so strange. The back of the, don't tell me this thing's defective, but the back of the liquid line, it looks like it's just a dead stop. It's machined aluminum in there. That's a new one on me. How this works, how much of that's a real restriction, let's put it that way, depending upon how that works. The old one, you see in the back of the old one, it's open, there's a hole there. On this one, it's a little bit of a restriction. But anyway, the deal is, I really don't want to do this. I used a pistol grip thing, and I'm not going to run the compressor during the middle of filming it, but I saw a guy with another on YouTube, third world type thing. He doesn't have tools or whatnot. He was showing the expansion valves. He actually took this thing, put it up to his mouth, and was blowing and sucking on this thing like a harmonica. Now, I don't really recommend that because I don't know what kind of chemicals are used in this thermostat, and I don't know what chemicals are in your refrigeration system. And he was using old ones to check if they worked. He was trying to blow a tune through this smaller hole on here. And if it flowed easy, the valve was good. If it didn't flow, the valve was bad. I'm going to test these out with compressed air and see how each one works. And I'm going to, if this one flows good, I'm going to use this one, the new one here, for my 300 SD. But those are some of the mysteries of air conditioning, automotive air conditioning. And the bottom line is, the only other part is the compressor. And if you turn the center of the compressor over by hand, it should spin smoothly. Turn it in the direction that your engine spins. And if the thing turns over and it feels smooth, compressor is probably okay. When they go bad, the compressors can seize up, and then when the clutch activates, you'll hear a terrible grinding noise, and it wouldn't work. And that's when you see the older cars with the separate V-belts. You'd see a lot of them where the people just cut the V-belt and they took it off the air conditioning compressor. And when I actually remember going to look at some cars back in the day when they had those V-belts, or if you're looking at a vintage car, and a couple of the guys whose cars I looked at, they were telling me, they were swearing that the air conditioning worked great in the car. And it might be like wintertime or fall here in New York when we were checking them. So I opened the hood, and the belt's not even on the compressor. You turn the compressor, you try to turn it, it's like stuck. So obviously they're lying, and the system is not in working order. So that's your only other component that's gonna cause your AC not to work, is that compressor, which you can usually get a rebuilt compressor from the auto parts. It's not really worth trying to dabble with that. I have taken one apart. I remember replacing the seal on it one time, and it's a bit of, if you don't do it every day, it's going to be a career just to learn, you know, to get the thing all apart and back together. But it's really interesting way they seal the compressor. There's actually a carbon seal, like a electric motor brush that's carbon, but it's circular, and it presses down against smooth metal disc, and this is what the shaft of your compressor's turning, the input shaft, you know, with the clutch, because it's belt driven. That's how they seal it. They use a carbon seal, so it can keep turning, and I guess the carbon polishes the steel and has a very smooth, low friction way to like rub. It self lubricates. The air conditioners you have at home, what they do is they put the electric motor that powers the compressor and with the shaft and everything, they seal it in a tank. They weld it shut because the motor can fit inside there, and that way there's no chance of leakage, and they don't need a seal for the shaft. So that's my AC repair video here, which I think I gave you some real good information. Now stay tuned for my automotive live stream car show, which is coming up soon, and subscribe for free, and you will be notified as a subscriber to my channel when I'm going to do the first automotive live stream. You can ask questions about car repairs, car troubles, any kind of topic like that. And we're going to talk more than just that. Just like we're going to talk about travel, science, different topics. Who knows where we'll go. And I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to try to do it like every week. And I'm just setting my studio up. I'm working on that. And man, well, I'll probably be doing that with this super hot weather we got going in New York. Very going to be in the 90s today. So I'm trying to do this in the morning here, and maybe get this valve in before it really heats up. Then I'll be working inside. So this is the kind of weather you definitely need your car AC working. And hey, we'll see. I'll let you know in the automotive live stream if I can get this 1993 Mercedes 300 SD AC working again. Because this thing's been a mystery. We tried charging it. The previous owner had taken it to a garage and they changed a pressure switch on the receiver dryer. But to no avail. The compressor keeps shutting off. And I think that's because of a blockage from the valve, an expansion valve. So we'll see what's up, and I'll see my subscribers in the live stream. All right, guys, have a good one.